Hi everyone, and welcome to Rum Runner Dance. I'm Dan Genovese. Today we're going to be making a classic cocktail, the Negroni.
Oh, blow the man down, bullies, blow the man down. Show me way, blow the man down. Blow the man down, bullies, blow him away.
Cocktail, the Negroni, is a classic cocktail that has been around since the golden age of cocktails. And there's a reason why it's still around right now. Now, you can go into a lot of history around which branch of the Negroni family actually started it. Was it really finalized as a recipe in Italy, or was it done in France? Was it done in the 1940s, or was it done in the 1920s? There's also the lawsuit and the court case in Italy around the Negroni. But we're not going to go into a lot of that. Really what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Camillo Negroni, who is the Count Negroni, who the drink was supposed to be named after. It's most widely accepted as being the correct story. So he was an Italian aristocrat who came to the United States around the turn of the century. And when he came here, he settled into Manhattan, and he was right in the highlight of the golden age of cocktails. Bars were packed. This is where you have like Jerry Thomas is very famous at this time, and cocktails such as the Martinez, the Martini were really, really popular. And also drinking vermouths as well as amaros together with some soda water, the Americano, really became very popular. So Count Negroni wasn't exposed to that until he came to the United States. Well, he stayed here for 5 years in Manhattan, and then he went back to Italy to live out the rest of his life. But he took with him the love of cocktails that he got from his time in the US. So there was a small cafe with a bartender that he knew very well that he used to stop in and have a quick drink before he went out for the night to drink. And what he had was just what was called an Americano, but he added gin to it, or he asked that gin be added to it. So this was Sweet Vermouth, a Campari, which is an Amaro, and then on top of that he had a gin. So they mixed the three of those together, put them into a glass. Now the original recipe is said to have a tiny splash of soda water in it. Today that kind of has gone away and really don't have any soda water in it. And that kind of has to go with a little bit later of the recipe's evolution over time. There was a lot of different ones that were out there, and they were all kind of, competing to have like a gin, Campari, and some kind of vermouth together in various different formulations. So why was it that we have, or I should say, how did we end up with the cocktail that we have right now? Well, a large part of that has to do with Campari. Campari was an Italian spirit company, and as an export to Italy, they were trying to drum up business. So what did they do? They incentivized people to come up with different types of cocktails using their ingredient. So that's how you really get a lot of these different names and formulations that were similar to a Negroni at around the same time. But that's also why it's kind of really hard to pin down exactly where it came from, because if you know that a lot of people are trying to use the same spirit to create cocktails at the same time, it's highly likely that two people are going to come up with very close or very approximate types of formulations of the same drink at the same time. It just happens. Bartenders tend to have similar palates and tastes, and when they land on something they like, they'll make it and they name it. Really, oftentimes, who gets credit for it is the first one that actually got it out there and it's known. So with that, we're going to get into this drink. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about the Negroni's flavor profile now that we talked a little bit about its history. The flavor of this drink is not really one that a lot of first-time cocktail drinkers like. Well, that's because it's a little bit sweet and it's bitter. Most people don't like the bitterness that has to go with Campari, and that's okay. There's a lot of ways that you can get used to a type of a Campari type drink or get introduced to it. But I have to admit, once you have a Negroni and you start to develop a taste for it, there's nothing better. They're one of my go-to cocktails. I love to sip on these. They're great to drink. And they really have that simultaneous sweet and bitterness, and that comes from your Sweet Vermouth and then your Campari. And then the gin that you pick here, you could really play around with some of these subtle herbal and botanical type notes that come into it just based upon the gin that you have. So really pick the gin that you really like, but make sure that you get yourself a good high quality vermouth, and make sure that you put it in the fridge after you open it. As you can see, I always like to get little bottles of them, and that's on purpose because I don't really use the big bottles fast enough that it'll start to oxidize and not taste that great. All right, so with that, let's get into the drink. So today I'm going to be using a mixing glass to make this, and actually all of my equipment that I'm going to be using here today, the jigger, the mixing glass, the Hawthorne strainer that I have, which I'm using Hawthorne instead of a julep strainer. You can use a julep. And also the bar spoon has all been supplied by Crew Supply Company. I want a big thank you to them for sending me this nice little care package. Make sure that you check out their site and you go ahead and you can pick up any of these items that they have, as well as those awesome infusion bottles that you keep seeing that have the twist on bottoms. Okay, so jigger. We're going to start off with our Sweet Vermouth here. It's a great drink. Everything's in equal parts, so you can make it as big or as small as you want, as long as everything's equal. So we're going to do 1 ounce of our Sweet Vermouth. All right, next we're going to do our Campari here. Again, 1 ounce. Last we're going to do is our London Dry Gin. It's typically made with London Dry Gin, but like I said, you can use any gin that you like. My favorite London Dry Gin is Ford's, so pick this up if you can get it. Need 1 ounce of this. I just need to grab some ice. I know I'm using my hands. I wouldn't normally, I would use a scoop, but I'm at home, so why not? Now all we're going to do is stir. Now you want to make sure when you're stirring, I never really went over stirring, make sure the bulb face part or the open face part of the spoon is faced towards the center at all times, and then you're going to rotate the back of it around the outside. So you're going to keep doing that. Make sure that you keep your finger on the outside just until your finger starts to get cold. Grab my glass, nice frozen glass here. Big rock of ice put in there. This is actually a double old-fashioned glass. You can put this into a single old-fashioned glass. I just like the big rocks of ice, so I get a double. Go ahead and strain this out over the top of your rock of ice. You can garnish this up any kind of way that you want. You can do an expression of orange peel, or you can do a half moon of orange. I am going to do something slightly different to get myself a nice dehydrated blood orange. I love the way they look. The smell of this smells just intense orange, but it doesn't give you the oils on top of the drink. But you still get that nose. So I kind of prefer this as to have like the first taste and a lot of orange on my palate. I'd rather just have the whiff of orange, and that's another reason why I like a big rock of ice, so I can just set this right on top, and it kind of sits right there on top, so you get the nose, but you don't actually get all the flavor of it. And there you have it, everybody. That is a classic Negroni. Let's get this a taste. Love that smell. Yeah, man, it's so good. All right, like I said before, this is not a cocktail that probably someone who's just starting to try different cocktails would necessarily like. And that's because the Campari is really a big proponent of the flavoring of this, and that's the first thing most people notice. It's the bitterness of the Campari. But actually, the first taste you really should get is of a very, very nice vermouth. You're going to get the sweetness right off the bat of it. And then that gives way to a botanical type of floralness that comes both from a little bit of the Campari, but also from the gin, and then it finishes off kind of bitter, and the bitterness kind of lingers a little bit on your palate. But it's amazing in the fact that once you get hooked on these are like so good. There's like nothing like it. The best thing I can kind of compare, if you're going to go for the tiki world of this, Jungle Bird is kind of very similar in the flavor profile, that it's kind of sweet and a little bit bitter. That makes Campari a little bit more approachable, I think, than Negroni, but honestly, it's definitely a little bit of an acquired taste, but it's absolutely worth trying. Have yourself one of these one night, and just sit back. And remember, it's not like a drinking cocktail. You're not going to like slam this down. This is going to be one that you sip on, which is why you want a nice rock of ice and just to kind of sit and chill and relax. So there you have it, everyone. The classic Negroni. Thanks so much for joining me today on the making of this amazing classic cocktail. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and click subscribe and like this video too, especially if you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it, I'd love to see some comments down there below telling me what you like about it. And also, do you have your own little take on a Negroni that you want to share? And while you're doing that, check out these videos that are down here. I have them, and they're coming out all the time about tiki, classic cocktails, and original ones, just by me. Thank you all so much, and until next time, everyone, I'll call it Maluna.